I really like the anything involving the Chaebols, actually. Let's watch that.
I still remember how I first learned about them. In Korean drama, it's a typical story idea. Most often, the story will zoom in and depict the rivalries and love lives of young, rich heirs.
Do you guys know what the Chaebols are? I've heard about it a little bit. Yes, it's fascinating. Yeah, it's like this super rich group of people. They're just the ultra rich and powerful and influential people of Korea. And one woman, I remember hearing a story that she made a turn play around because they served her a pack of peanut in the pack instead of on a platter, and she made the whole plane turn around. Your ex worked for one? Jesus, I'm sorry for her. Oh, they're families who own the corporations. Okay, that's more precise. No, they're not of higher birth. They're just like powerful and rich, fucking rich, filthy rich. Yes.
Heirs from various families.
Is the audio good?
그리 가져갔던 DMC 사업권 결국 감당 못하고 순양건설에 넘기기로 했어요. 생각해봐요, 모여민 씨. 세상에 당신한테만 그렇게 친절할 리 없잖아. 닥쳐.
Yeah, corporate royalty in a sense is a good way to describe it.
This seemingly innocent story idea was actually inspired by a much more corrupted reality.
Korean Chaebol.
They basically single-handedly run the economy.
Oh, that's Rotten Mango. Love her channel. I love her channel. Love her videos. I made Parrot addicted to her channel too. She covers a lot of like Asian true crime, which I don't like true crime, but I like that kind of, I like the high profile crazy stories that I'm interested. So yeah. There's a huge economic disparity in Korea. That's why it's very status-focused society. I wonder how much of it is acting. I mean, some of the replays here were from a show.
Rich, and then there's super rich.
This is like rich, like can't be touched by law, control presidents type of rich.
Park has been detained on a slew of charges.
Lee Jae-young was arrested in the early hours. Is now under
Accepting
arrest.
a bribe of nearly $40 million from Samsung
But
Group.
to tell you this rabbit hole that I discovered.
They're like the untouchable, basically, of Korea. Isn't that what it means? What does it mean? New sub. Thank you, Shaden the Lich. Thank you so much. Thank you for the resub on Twitch. Happy Thanksgiving, Rima. How was yours? It was great. I ate a lot. It actually worked to help Korea develop quickly, but then worked against them once the country was developed. Because what, they can't control these people? Rotten Mango is so damn good in what she does. I like the husband part. It makes it more relatable. Like, I like that he asks questions. Yeah, I think it's a great concept. I didn't know her before with the mukbangs and stuff. It's not really my type of content, but I just found her out recently, and I enjoyed watching her stuff.
In the most interesting way possible.
She actually the one that inspired me into like hiring people that can translate other languages so I can bring foreign stories to the Western world, in a sense, like translate them in English and have people fact check stuff for me. Because, for example, for certain Chinese website, we needed somebody that had a Chinese ID to access them.
Again.
There's another channel that does that style. Oh, send it to me.
December 5th, 2014, New York John F. Kennedy Airport. At 2:05 p.m., Korean Air Flight 086, cabin crew began to distribute nuts as snacks to passengers. Distribution started from the first class.
That's gonna be the story that I spoiled it. I didn't know it was in the video, I swear. The Samsung family, I heard another story about them that was incredible. It was like how they thought the heiress of the Samsung family had married like a low-ranking employee or a janitor or whatever. And then there was a scandal between the two of them and they got divorced. And she was like the super intelligent kind of woman, like the kind that never breaks a sweat is how they described her. Like, you know, the type of people that always keep their composure. And apparently she did all of that. It was a ploy for her to remain independent. And she made it so she married somebody she could control easily that was of lower IQ than her, and then divorced so she could sort of quote unquote remain independent. I don't know if it's true, man. That's all I heard. It's hearsay. So you should look up the process to apply to work at Korean Air. There's a specific plastic surgery they get to qualify. That story is famous. Wow.
Suddenly, a heated argument was burst out between the passenger and
it's
the
nice.
cabin crew.
I like how
Nobody really knew how powerful
flight
this
attendant.
passenger was until it escalated into hit confrontation.
A woman named Heather Cho,
Why was she flying coach?
Korean Air's vice president for cabin service, and wait for it, daughter of the airline's chairman, she was served macadamia nuts in a bag instead of on a plate. As Ms. Cho forced the plane to return to the gate.
Rookie mistake. Why would they serve it in the bag instead of a plate? Of course. Should have known better. You can guess what airline I'm flying next year. True, same. No more Sunwing airline. Fuck that shit.
Where she had the head of the cabin crew kicked off.
Good night, Renzu.
비난 여론이 거세지고 있는 가운데 국토부는 항공법 위반 여부를 조사하고 있습니다.
검찰은 조만간 조전 부사장을 소환할 방침입니다.
폭력 행위 및 사적 권위에 의해 사법 경찰권이 있는 사무장이 운항 중인 항공기에서 퇴거됨으로써 항공기 운항의 안전이 위협받고
Heather Cho was charged with violating aviation law by changing the flight plan, carrying a sentence of up to 10 years.
And after the story sparked outrage throughout South Korea and much of the world, she resigned some of her duties.
I wish I could talk about stuff like that on my channel. That I feel like I somehow kind of branched out a little bit, and that's why in my Vtuber kidnap video, I was happy that I could talk about adjacent stories that weren't just about VTubers and more about other scandalous cases that had happened in the country around the same time.
But only after 3 months, Cho was suspended for 2 years and the sentence was reduced to 5 months. Months later, she was found not guilty of all charges.
What?
법원 전원 합의체는 조전 부사장의 항로 변경 부분은 무죄라고 판단했습니다.
Well, Heather Cho said she would resign from all positions under the Hanjin Group. In 2018, Cho made her comeback as the president of 3 Hanjin Group affiliated companies. In fact, back in 2013, a similar incident happened.
It's like cancelled YouTubers, they always come back. Yeah, adjacent topics are good.
Cho, but it was eventually covered up by the Korean Air.
Korean Air attempted to destroy evidence related to the in-flight nut rage.
4 years later, the younger sister of Cho came under fire as well.
Former Korean Air executive involved in the water rage scandal over allegations she threw a glass of water at an ad agency employee.
What?
진심으로 죄송합니다.
And
This
right
is
here
not
is
demure.
where I was hooked.
Not very demure of her.
So I did a bit of research. Then I start to realize who these people really are. Chaebols are what they're being called. By definition, a chaebol is a big conglomerate that's controlled by a family dynasty of its founder. But if you're not familiar with it, then perhaps you're familiar with these iconic companies of South Korea. As of 2023,
Yeah,
there are
this
a
is only
total
what they
of
get caught
82
doing.
chaebols in South Korea.
이제 대한민국 경제의
I'm sure it's the tip of the iceberg.
것처럼
생각하는 사람들이 한편에서 많이 있어요.
But as I went further down into my research, I realized that with these chaebols, scandals are never ending.
Chairman of Korean Air. Tax evasion. They all do tax evasion. Embezzlement. They have so much money and they chose to. They have so much money and they chose to commit crime and take the risk of going down and losing everything to make more money. Why? The other thing is each of these families is tied to specific politicians. So whenever one party goes out of favor politically, they prosecute that family and favor a different family. Yo, oh my God, it's like medieval times, but modern. I love that even more. Yeah, so if you look at Korean politicians, they all get prosecuted at some point. My mind is blown. Well, when you play the Game of Thrones, you either win or you die.
Made rule in South Korea's judiciary system, written for the chaebols, which is the 3-5 rule. The rule refers to a 3-year suspended prison sentence. If no further violations occur in the following 5 years, the sentence is then fully exempt regardless of the crime committed. And I kept pondering, how could this happen?
주된 양형의 이유, 왜 이 사람을 실형을 선고하지 않고 집행유예로 풀어주느냐, 거기에 대부분의 사유들이 국가경제에 기여한 바가 크다. 이런 것들이 있기 때문에
이제는 재벌들이 정부와 국민을 장악하고 법으로 통제하려고 합니다.
To South Korea, the chaebols are the key to its economic growth. Perhaps the best demonstration is looking through a single eye-popping data.
4대 재벌의 경제력 집중 그리고 자산 총액 규모 이런 것들이 최근 10년 사이에 많이 높아졌습니다.
4대 재벌 내지 5대 재벌이 사실 우리 이른바 재벌들의 반 정도를 차지한다 이렇게 볼 수가 있고요.
The revenue of the 10 biggest chaebols accounted for almost 60% of South Korea's GDP, and this staggering degree of economic concentration makes even the most extreme examples in the rest of the world appear routine. Japan's biggest company, Toyota, accounts for about 5% of GDP.
A few companies or most of Korea's GDP, they don't have small businesses the way the US does, so this makes Korea extremely vulnerable to these big corporations? Yeah, you said exactly what the guy said.
In the US, Walmart sits at just 2.5%.
Oh, okay.
And because these business
there you go, he even
compared it. Dynasties, which means that just a few families in South Korea possess a vast amount of the country's wealth, power, and influence. The thing is, chaebols and come from nowhere.
Dude, his light is crazy. Like his setting, by the way, it's very well put together.
Come from nowhere. In fact, South Korea was never meant to be rich. It's destined to be poor. Just take a look at the map. In South Korea, only 22% of its land is arable, and the rugged, steep terrain doesn't make up for its lack of agricultural resources through minimal wealth. The country has limited coal and domestic oil reserves. South Korea should be poor, but it's not. To understand this seemingly impossible rise of South Korea and how the chaebols reached such a point, we have to dial back the clock.
$1960. Okay. They're playing Civ on hard mode, yo, for reals. They got the bad spawn point.
Swept down out of the north, determined to unify Korea under a communist banner by force of arms. The Republic of Korea could not defend itself against the sudden fury of the Red Assault. Death and devastation spread over a helpless people. Korea had become a place of 24-hour terror.
Following the Korean War, South Korea was devastated. relying heavily on imports, but not producing or exporting many goods at all. Syngman Rhee, South Korea's first president, began funneling international
They
aid.
were so poor after the war that they literally aspired to be as rich as the Philippines. That's how fucked they were post-war. Damn.
To different business owners.
Horrible dictator? Spoilers!
But as I dive deeper into these specific bits of history, I find out the true intention of providing these business owners with capital aid was actually less about boosting Korea's economy.
Wait, was that guy a dictator or were you talking about before? President Rhee?
More about consolidating his own political power by asking them to provide the dirty money to rig the election. But after all, South Korea was still poor. The amount of exports was still far less than that of imports. It was still overwhelmingly agricultural and underdeveloped.
President Rhee has gone from the political scene, thrust out
Do we have a good amount of exports now in Canada?
by the revolt of the people.
Riots on the scale of revolution. More was to follow, but it already looked like the end of the road for President Syngman Rhee.
And soon after, in 1961, Rhee was overthrown by a military leader.
Oh,
That
cool.
was soon turned the tide. Named Park Chung-hee.
Sure hell, will do. You missed a lot.
나는 북한을 순수하고 국가를 보유하며 국민의 자유와 복리의 증진에 노력하여 대통령으로서의 직책을
Unlike Rhee, Park had a crystal clear vision to make things better for his country. But to do so, he had to foster a new strategy. While Park originally planned to crush these business owners for their involvement in corrupting with Rhee, he gave up this plan eventually because he had another grand plan that might need the contribution.
우리가 더 많은 돈을 벌고 싶다면 수입은 제한되어야 하고 수출은 크게 장려되어야 합니다.
Bolstering the
Dude, they're literally playing Civilization or like Manor when you gotta export more than you import.
of Korean-made products worldwide. This was the first and also the most critical words of the plan that these business owners could see.
자,
When did they start exporting K-pop? That's one of their biggest exports now, right?
각자에게 특정 산업을 배정했습니다. 현대에게는 자동차 산업, 삼성과 럭키 금성통신에게는 전자 산업, 선경에게는 석유와 미디어 산업입니다. 5년 내 우리의 제품이 세계로 수출되고 우리는 빈곤에서 벗어나야 합니다. 이번에는 반드시
What about pharmaceuticals?
여러분은 반드시 성공해야 하며 후퇴는 없습니다.
Who owns the pharmaceuticals there?
감옥에 갈 것입니다.
However, the only way for the Chaebols to get the capital they needed for expansion was to meet Park's expectations. If they failed to satisfy him, Park would just allow them to collapse.
They aren't
And
as big
these
in pharma?
family-owned,
Okay.
government fund-controlled companies eventually came to be known as the Chaebols.
Interesting.
후진 국가에 있어서 경제 개발 계획을 집행하는 데 있어서 그 계획이 성공됐느냐 또 잘못됐느냐 하는 그 평가를 기준을 대략 계획 사업의 80% 정도가 달성됐을 때에는 성공됐다고 이렇게 보고 있는 것입니다.
By providing cheap steel, plenty of subsidies, lenient loans, and tax breaks, Park made these family businesses expand vertically and horizontally. In 1960, South Korea's GDP was less than $4 billion. Fast forward 20 years later, in 1979, the number skyrocketed to almost $17 billion.
Oh, wow.
10여 년 동안에 우리 사회에는 엄청난 변혁을 가져왔습니다. 남들은 1세기 또는 수세기에 걸쳐서 이룩한 일들을 우리는 불과 15, 16년 만에 성취했습니다. 60년대 초까지만 하더라도 전통적인 농경사회였던 우리나라가 이제 중화공업 국가로부터 다시 고도 산업 사회로 이행해.
All in all, Park saved South Korea. just so happened, in the same year, the democracy movement flourished.
The anti-dictatorship protest against Park Chung-hee took place in Busan.
I really love how this documentary so far like switched between the narration and showing clips. It's like really similar to my style, but like 10 times better. But really well done so far. Everything's really tight, really beautifully put together and interesting.
The second largest city in Korea.
At the same year, in October, amidst the movement, Park was assassinated.
Park Chung-hee, who ruled the country for more than 18 years, is dead. The new government announced that President Park was killed by a shot fired at a dinner party Friday night in downtown Seoul.
What Park had never thought about
그러한 기준에서 본다면
is that behind this prosperous status quo,
우리나라의 1차 5개년 계획은
there will be a heavy price to pay for the South Koreans in the near future.
계획 사업이 금년 말로서
Major political upheaval tonight in South Korea.
그것은 성공적이었다.
Calling for the resignation of President Park Geun-hye.
Yeah, even the little montage between his discourse back then that was hopeful and he was confident, and then the news anchor talking about political unrest in the modern Thai Korea, that was so good. With the music, that was so good. He was assassinated during a coup too. Oh my god.
The President. It is my pleasure to introduce the Gallup Note 10.
Samsung Electronics has been ranked by far South Korea's most valuable brand.
Ah.
Electronics has broken another.
So now they control the government instead. Samsung has become one of the most powerful chaebol in South Korea. Some even describe South Korea as the Republic of Samsung.
Have been raided by prosecutors along with the officers of the country's National Pension Service. It's said to be in connection with the influence peddling scandal embroiling the country's president and his top advisors.
Some might argue South Korea is Samsung and Samsung is South Korea. Well, I wouldn't disagree with that. Year after year, about 20% of the entire nation's...
Imagine that. We already think some of the American corpos are too powerful. Like, put that in perspective to them.
...economy is made up by Samsung Group alone. The only single entity that can compete with it is the South Korean government, whose spending typically makes up to 20% of GDP. But perhaps the centrality could be attributed to how much Samsung has penetrated into South Korean life. What you're looking at is the business structure of Samsung. When you buy a smartphone, you buy it from Samsung. When you need life insurance, you purchase a policy from Samsung. When you take the ferry, you step onto a ship built by Samsung. When you go to the theme park, you once again pay your money to Samsung. But behind this scattered, convoluted web of business owned by Samsung, there's a question that you might leave out. Just a simple Google search, we found the entire Samsung group is worth around $400 billion. Meanwhile, the net worth of its current president, Lee Jae-yong, is actually less than $10 billion, which is less than 2% of the entire group. And these numbers already include his father's large amount of inheritance. So how was he able to control the entire company then? In my common sense, if a person wants to take control of a company, he or she has to own 51% of the shares. But in practice, I'm completely wrong. Imagine you're running a conglomerate.
I thought it was like, I can't remember the word, the structure that they have in Succession.
And let's call your very core business as Company A. This Company A has a major shareholder, Company B. This Company B has a major shareholder as well, Company C. So on and so forth. And finally, here comes the company that you have direct control and majority shares. The valuation of this company in this long chain is only worth 800 million. So eventually, you only need 400 million to gain control of this company and also all other companies. And for these companies, they don't really need to have a business themselves, but they only serve as de facto companies that control many more other affiliated companies. Even more, you might not even need this much, because this is a combined amount between you and your ally investor. And this strategy has its own name.
Okay, that's not the same. That's not what I was talking about. This is a new concept for me. I didn't know this. It's a web of companies, like the shell companies you were mentioning earlier, LM.
Use this exact strategy to create this complicated web of ownerships that can even confuse the savviest.
But how is this legal?
But ultimately, what matters most to the Lee family is the complete control of the entire Samsung empire. But this strategy is fragile, especially when someone dies.
Corporate controlling other companies like a chain of command? Yeah, but it's the smallest company is controlling the other one, basically, so I don't get it. Why is him controlling the smallest one off of that chain give him access to the other ones?
삼성 이건희 회장이 건강 문제로 어젯밤 병원에 입원했습니다.
These health complications has Samsung Group on high alert.
The chairman of Samsung Electronics has yet again emerged as a massive concern to the management of the sprawling Samsung Group.
In 2014, the former president of Samsung, Lee Kun-hee, suffered a heart attack. He barely survived and was hospitalized.
Small company A owns shares of larger company B, which owns shares of larger company C. Okay, I get it.
For months. Meanwhile, his children started to become worried.
That's why they pay lawyers big money to hire the shit out. Yes, exactly. And you guys in chat, oh, this is just standard corpo BS. Yeah, how'd you not know that? Bitch, even the highly paid lawyers don't know that. What do you mean? Stop acting like you know everything. You gave me the most standard general answers. The only person who answered something accurate here was LM.
Especially his elder son.
Samsung is also expected to accelerate its corporate succession to Lee's 3 children. Lee's son, Samsung Electronics Vice Chairman Lee Jae-young, is expected to eventually succeed him.
You see, South Korea has one of the highest inheritance tax rate in the world, 50%. If their father passed away, they would have to pay a huge amount of taxes to the government, likely by selling most of their shares, which would cause them to lose control over the Samsung empire.
I'm out of water.
Lee Jae-young did a plan. And he stared at the web of business that his father owned, and suddenly, he was clicked. See, if we remove most of the insignificant affiliates of this mega business empire and keep the most crucial ones, there will be only 2 left. 1, the Samsung CNT. 2, the Chill Industries. These 2 companies.
It's okay, I had a vodka bottle, we're good. Chat is never wrong. I want to make a t-shirt saying chat made me do it.
Set up to serve the most crucial business, Samsung Electronics. But the problem is, throughout the years, the Lee family's control over Chill was much more stronger than CNT. Worse still, the control of CNT was failing as other hostile investors continued to buy in. If we put ourselves in the shoes of the Lee family, perhaps the most sensible thing to do is to...
But Your Honor, chat made me do it. Yes. Blame them.
overvalue Chill and undervalue CNT. You will effectively end up with more control over the new combined de facto holding company and more control over the entire empire without spending a cent. Ideally speaking, it works. But the thing is, this merger will immediately dilute the shares of CNT. And even though the Lee family knew this, they proposed exactly that. 1 CNT share convert to 0.35 Chill Industry shares. And when the Lee family announced this proposal, they create a far-reaching backlash.
The 3rd largest stakeholder in Samsung CNT, who had been trying to block the merger, argued that it undervalues the construction unit.
Says the proposed merger between Samsung CNT and Chill Industries is unlawful and unfair and should be blocked.
To Lee Jae-young, perhaps the most perplexing problem is to get shareholders to agree on this unfair proposal. and major decisions like mergers require approval from 2/3 of the shareholders.
Samsung C&T is pouring all of its efforts into getting shareholders to support its proposed merger with another Samsung Group affiliate.
But while Lee Jae-yong was still scratching his head, he noticed a name.
Okay.
The biggest well amongst all shareholders, with 11.6% of ownership. The South Korean National Pension Service.
700만 해외
That's what we need to own of Hololive.
동포 여러분, 저는 오늘 대한민국의 제18대
This pension service was run by government, which at that time was run by President Park Geun-hye. In other words, if Lee could get to President Park, she might be able to get to the pension service. And conveniently, they had
Wait,
a person.
Wait, so she owns that pension company? Did I misunderstand that part? I'm getting a little lost.
Have the power to turn this deal into reality.
박근혜 대통령과 최순실 씨의 40년 우정은 새마음회 조직을
She doesn't own it. Oh, it's just government pension. Okay. But they own companies.
Park's confidants.
They need to invest in companies. Okay.
Position in government. She would pick out outfits, edit speeches, and make policy suggestions for Park, thereby influencing Park's decision.
그다음에 당당하고 이제 그건 대한민국은 이제 우리
대한민국 사람들이 어느 나라에 어디에 가든지 항상 그 네트워크가 형성이 돼서 당당하고 당당한 대한민국의 국민을 만들고 그 틀을 마련하는 거에 아주 쏟아부을 것이다. 그 얘기를 좀 해야지.
그런 게 없으면 이게 뻥을 치는 것 같은데.
And what's more, Choi was also
Taiwan also has a female president. It just occurred to me that there's been more like female presidents in Asia. And in North America, we really haven't. Like in Canada, we haven't even had a prospect. Just something I noticed just now. Class of corruption, let's go. Oh, we had one female prime minister. Alexa, stop! Okay, she's telling me when the Japanese stock market opens.
managing 2 non-profit foundations that she had set up. And she
Trudeau's a female president, true!
But behind the curtains, the donation was instead used for her personal benefits, acting as the top of the funnel in a complex, globe-spanning money laundering scheme.
Chae Soon-sil was a close friend of the president and is accused of using that friendship to get money and favors from companies.
Following this is a donation of $36 million to Choi Foundations from Lee Jae-yong. And surprise, surprise, in 2015, the National Pension Service approved the merger and acquisition deal of CNT and Chill Industries.
And in the latest industry news, 2 major units in Korea's biggest conglomerate, Samsung Group, have announced a merger. The move will clean up the group's complicated share structure and pave the way for new leadership.
His succession is almost complete as South Korea's fair trade watchdog formally recognized Lee Jae-yong as the group's chief 2 years ago.
The Lee family shot up control of the Samsung empire into the next generation successfully. But they have to accept the price.
Major political upheaval tonight in South Korea.
Calling for the resignation of President Park Geun-hye.
Park is accused of colluding with a friend who allegedly pressured big companies to give money in return for government favors.
I love how they did these puppets of the president. Oh, that's like her assistant person. And they're saying she's controlling her. That's crazy. That's a powerful message.
With a friend who allegedly pressured big companies to give money in return for government favors.
South Koreans came together to make their voices heard.
Oh, Germany too, Spades?
What they were fighting against was not only about the omniscient power the Lee's family holds, but also about the corruption of the entire political system.
He is accused of providing President Park Geun-hye's confidant Chae Soon-sil with millions of dollars in exchange for political support for a merger of 2 Samsung affiliates.
Park Geun-hye has been detained on a slew of charges. Court has issued an arrest warrant for Chae Soon-sil.
Lee Jae-yong was arrested in the early hours.
Is now under arrest.
A bribe of nearly $40 million from
There's something in South Korea called a Cheonghwa-dae curse. A curse that every president who enters office will have a bad ending to their life.
commits suicide by jumping off a cliff. Sentenced for accepting bribes, abusing power, and embezzling.
There's no such thing as a curse. Because ever since Korea became democratic, almost every president has been corrupted by the Chaebols. And this perpetuates a cycle that seemingly cannot be broken. In fact, the first Chaebol regulations were introduced in the Monopoly Regulation and Fair Trade Act in 1986, but it had loopholes from its very beginning. Reforms were also recommended by the International Monetary Fund during the Asian...
Yeah, it's exactly what you said earlier.
Ineffective. Following Park
that you said they all like prosecute each other once they fall out of favor. And everybody has dirty hands, so they obviously find something.
Moon Jae-in came into office pledging to make changes for Korean citizens.
앞으로는 법인세를 낮추어 주면서 뒤로는 또 막대한 돈을 이른바 준조세 형식으로 걷어가는 반기업적인
Changes to the malpractice of the 3-5 rule were highly anticipated. But never did Moon make his promise.
Of course.
And less than 18 months later, the Court of Appeals decided to suspend Lee Jae-yong's sentence and place him on probation.
Samsung's public image is taking a bit of a beating due to the deaths of some of its factory workers. Families of the victims say their loved ones fell ill after getting exposed to toxic chemicals at the company's work site.
In a documentary from
they have so much money and they work people to the bone.
Vice, it followed the story of a girl called Yumi Huang who worked at the factory of Samsung to make computer chips. And Yumi had a simple dream: to save enough money for a future wedding and to send her brother to college. Getting a job in Samsung with stable income and benefits was supposed to help her get closer
Getting
to
into Samsung is the big thing in Korea.
But this job posed her a critical risk. You see, making computer chips requires dipping silicon wafers in harsh chemicals day after day, month after month, year after year. And not long after, with just 3 years into this job, a tragedy befell Yumi.
또 몸이 언제부터 그랬던 거야?
이제 유미하고 지 친구 이제 수원에 있는 병원을 가니까는 그 병원에서 그 바로 유미를 그 입원을 시켜놓고 그 이제 나하고 유미 엄마를 오라고 그런 거예요. 의사 선생님이 그 나를 보고서는 복도로 잠깐 나오라고 얘기를 하더라고요. 그래서 내가 이제 복도로 이렇게 나왔어요.
I saw this documentary. It's very sad.
유미는 급성 골수성 백혈병이라 그랬어요.
Behind the backdrop of this all, there was a person witnessing everything.
Her father.
Huang, father of Yumi Huang.
이제 3월 6일 날 그 아침에 일찌감치 이제 그 유미 그 병원 치료 받으라고 여기서 이제 새벽에 한 4시 반쯤 되면 여기서 출발해요. 유미가 이렇게 뒤에서 이렇게 들어놓여 있다가는 아 더워 그러는 거예요. 그 뒤로 이렇게 돌아다 보니까 땀을 아주 뻘뻘 흘리고 있는 거예요. 그래 고속도로에서 나 뒤로 이렇게 돌아다보래. 이렇게 돌아보니까 그 사이에 벌써 숨이 다 이렇게 넘어가고 눈은 벌써 이렇게 치뜨는 거 보세요. 아 이게 상당히 아주 이게 의심이 가는 거야. 유미 병이 지금 왜 걸렸지 하는 그런 생각이 들어가는 거예요. 병원에 이제 한 며칠에 한 번씩 한 일주일에 한 번씩 오는 그 과장님이 있었는데 그 과장님한테 물어봤어요. 유미가 웨이퍼를 반도체를 화학약품을 쓰면서 담궜다 뺐다 하는 작업을 했다 그러는데 이러면은 이거 산업재해로 인정해주면은 안 되냐고 그랬어요. 그 산재 보험을 적용을 해달라 그랬어요.
삼성을 해체하라! 이걸 나와! 야! 살이냐! 나와! 야!
그 과장이 나를 보고서는 아니 아버님이 이 큰 회사 삼성을 상대로 해서 이기려고 그러십니까? 그런 거예요.
Sang-hee was informed by Samsung that his family will receive no compensation at all.
사실 저희가
The least you could do. They took someone's life for their chips so they could make some money and they won't even give them compensation. They probably did everything to silence them afterward. Disgusting.
가장 힘들었던 거는 저희가 삼성을 상대로 싸운다는 느낌이 아니라
삼성과 이미 짬짬이가 되어 있는 정부기관과 싸운다. 노동부 산하 근로복지공단, 그리고 경찰 이런 곳들과 싸운다는 그런 느낌이 강했고 그런 경험들이 많이 있었는데
싸워야 되겠다는 생각이 들어가는데 내가 뭐 어떻게 싸워야 되는지 말을 어떻게 해야 되는지 뭐 누가 나를 아는 사람도 하나도 까지 앞이 캄캄한 거야. 어떻게 해야 될지 모르겠는 거야.
없을 사람 우리만 지키고 기관이는 안 지켜? 쟤네들 안 지키라고. 아니 진짜 전차는 우리만 전차받고.
The cop is going to take him away. He's right.
Prove fruitful in the end.
They're asking him to follow the law, but the corporals don't even. They're above it.
Workers need that information so they can apply for workers' compensation from the state if necessary. But an Associated Press investigation has found that at least 6 times South Korean authorities have, at Samsung's request, withheld that information because Samsung says it fears trade secrets will be exposed.
While everyone thought the case had been brought to the end, an internal document from Samsung was leaked. The document contained a non-public list of chemicals utilized in tasks like those assigned to Yumi, and that indirectly proved the guilt of Samsung.
하지만 유미와 제 가족이 겪었던 아픔은 잊을 수 없습니다. 너무 많은 분들이 이런 아픔을 갖고 있기 때문에 그렇습니다.
In 2018, Samsung finally issued a public apology to Sankey.
삼성전자는 2018년
Bro, it's not even sick factory worker. It's a dead factory worker that got sick because of your chemicals.
11월 1일 발표된 중재안을 조건 없이 수행하여 이행할 것을 약속드립니다. 오늘 이 자리를 빌어 병으로 고통받고 있는 직원들과 그 가족분들께 진심으로 사과드립니다.
Yeah, the father didn't give up fighting.
힘없고 가난한 노동자라 비서 작업 현장에서 사학력 노동에서 몸들고 누간 노동자를 힘들는 놈들로 긴 시간 동안 해결하지 못한 것은 크므로 부탁받는 겁니다.
Dude, 10 years of your life spent fighting to get a crumb of recognition, like a crumb of justice.
Sankey, there was still a total of 320 victims that had never been reported by the media.
Oh wow.
웃고 있는 것입니다. 공직자 여러분들 정신 차리십시오.
더 충격적이었던 건 삼성이 그 자기네 회사 앞에서 사옥 앞에서 아마 1인 시위를 오래 했던 사람들의 명단을 이렇게 좀 만들어놔요. 뭐 저기에 있는 저런 지명수배 명단 같은 그 지명수배 명단 같은 그 양식이 똑같은 양식인데 거기 제일 윗줄에 뭐라고 써있냐면 우수 고객 명단이라고 써있어요. 그러니까 피해자들을 조롱하는 거죠. 자신의 딸을 잃은 아버지를 그냥 그 앞에서 시위를 했다는 이유로 우수고객이다 이렇게 조롱을 하는 걸 보면서 와 이거는 예의를 넘어서 예의와 윤리에 문제가 있는 게 아닌가.
And you might wonder why weren't they reported by the media?
그러니까 저도 언론인으로서 되게 부끄러운.
You think they didn't acknowledge it because of the legal implications?
얘기긴 한데 우리나라
Or just because they want to spend the
기업의
money?
광고 없이는 생존을 못 하는데 최대의 광고주는 삼성이니까 삼성이 바라는 대로 기사를 쓸 수밖에 없겠죠.
When injustice happens in our society, the media has an important job to be objective and tell the truth to the public. And clearly, South Korea went
Oh, they
on
can't
this.
acknowledge it because they have liability.
To
I
these
see.
families, it took 11 years to protest endlessly. 11 years to bring the cases to light.
건강한 모습으로 입사를 했습니다. 하지만 결국 그녀에게 돌아온 건 백혈병이라는 무시무시한 질병이었습니다.
11 years to get unfair compensation.
Oh, it's 11.6 million to all the families put together, each family getting around a few $100,000. And they made 54 billion in profits. That doesn't bring back the life of your child, though. They write these things off as risk.
After doing rounds of research, I knew about the education system and culture in South Korea. They're all preaching the same message: to get young people working for the chaebols. You see, unlike US or Europe, there's no such thing as rolling recruitment in South Korea, which means these chaebols will only recruit once or twice a year, and each year, hundreds of thousands of students will take this exam. They prepare their entire life for it, only hoping to score high enough to get a recruiter's attention.
그런 뭐 적성 검사라든지 입사 시험을 대비한
Oh no, man. Dude, if you live in... Dude, no wonder these kids want to become esports players now. It's like a way out of that system.
하기 위한 문제집도 있어요. 수능처럼 준비되기도 하고 나는 뭐 삼성도 보고 LG도 보고 뭐 SK도 보고 다른 기업들도 보겠지만 유독 삼성은
StarCraft better than Samsung. Hell yeah.
삼성 고시라고들 많이 하더라고요.
It's considered the apex of success to pass all these academic and social hurdles to be deemed worthy to work at these chaebols. And this idealistic vision is encapsulated across the society.
성황대학교에 재학 중인 3학년 심영호입니다. 현재 취업을 준비하고 있습니다. 삼성, 현대, SK 3개 정도 수능 때도 서울대, 고대, 연대 그랬다면 지금도 삼성, 현대, SK 옆에서 봐도 공부하고 있고 옆을 또 보면 공부하고 있고 내 앞에도 공부하고 뒤에도 공부하고 대기업에 가고 싶다는 선택지인 거죠. 그 외는 전혀 없어요. 왜냐하면 우선 임금 격차가 많이 납니다. 거의 2배 가까이 나고 복지 같은 경우도 차이가 많이 나고
For those who weren't even allowed to take the test, and those who didn't advance past it, they will move to the next layer in the social hierarchy of careers.
But are the salaries really that worse in every other company? Those 3 universities mentioned are the top 3, like Harvard, Yale, Stanford. They call them the Sky University, which is the acronym. Wow.
Small and medium-sized companies. A fact that will be
It's not even close. Okay. Well, at least they have competitive salaries.
시선인 것 같아요. 주변에서의 시선. 대기업을 못 가면 실패한 인생. 제 주변에 중소기업을 가겠어 라고 해서 간 경우는 없고 보통 대기업에 도전해서 실패하면 소리소문 없이 가 있는 경우는 많이 봤었는데 연락은 안 돼요.
Jeez. What a bleak reality.
After doing my research on this story, I wanted to learn more about the point of view of a Korean. So I ended up messaging with my Korean friend in college. His response was concise, yet resigned. Today, South Koreans must face the repercussions of this miraculous growth. Faced with high unemployment rate and wealth inequality, it totally makes sense to feel increasingly disillusioned with their future. To the government, the chaebols might lead them to a more prosperous future. But to many Koreans, the chaebol represent everything that is wrong with their country's economy. Truth is, South Korea can't survive without chaebols, but to some extent, chaebols can survive without South Korea. They can always restructure, relocate away from the nation. Although my head was still filled with questions.
Damn.
It's hard
So
for me
Korea's
to
lost
believe.
all of its leverage, huh? They can't dismantle their power because they'll just leave.
That this power structure of enterprise above nation is tenable. And perhaps the problem is never about the lack of solution.
Oh, this part's
but it's
wrong?
about the unwillingness of the government.
He's wrong about that?
In which I think they truly believe that the chaebols are so powerful that they can't be replaced.
In terms of chaebol-centric economic development, chaebol-dominated Korean economy, democracy is now replaced by corporatocracy.
But if we can do nothing to change this situation, where will we head to?
They would lose political importance if they moved? Oh, okay.
Hi, my friends. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you do appreciate our efforts putting in this video, please give a like. If you do enjoy watching, please let me know in the comment section. And if you want to watch more videos like this, please subscribe to our channel because we have so many exciting ideas that are yet to be created. But again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.
Powered by Kaizen Lab. Damn. If you found this video interesting, you'd probably be interested in the Ford Pinto scandal too, one of the most jaw-dropping cases of corporate negligence in the US. Martin Lee? What? He only has 8,000 subscribers? How? This channel deserves so much more? That was really good. That's crazy. That was a very high quality documentary. Yeah, really great video by Martin Lee. It explored some concepts really well.